The Galactic Council's archives carried 1,000 tales of rise and fall, but none so peculiar as the humans. They had burned bright, far brighter than a species with so little time the stars had any right to. In 3 centuries they had gone from climbing out of their gravity well to staking colonies across dozens of worlds. Impulsive, brash, and insatiably curious, they were called many things. Allies, rivals, pirates, innovators, a thorn in the paw of every older empire. And then they were gone. At first it was subtle. Trade ships that once flooded the hyperlanes went missing from the registers. Diplomats stopped attending council sessions. Outposts fell silent. Weeks turned into months. Eventually, no transmissions, no signals, no echoes of human life remained. Where once their voices filled the galactic mesh with chatter, music, and arguments, there was only static. The council convened emergency inquiries. Fleets were dispatched to Sol and the surrounding colonies. They found nothing but quiet skies and empty ports. Earth's orbital stations hung dark, drifting skeletons. Mars, once blazing with industry, lay covered in dust storms that raged over abandoned domes. Colonies beyond showed the same. Outposts gutted of supplies, ships missing from their berths. Extinction, declared the Erethan archivist, his voice like grinding stone. The humans have done what humans always do. They destroyed themselves. Most of the council nodded. After all, hadn't it been foretold? Humanity's history was steeped in conflict. They warred with themselves longer than they had been united. Their appetite for weapons was legendary. Their fractious politics infamous. Too volatile, the Sigrian chancellor hissed. A fire that burns too hot burns itself out. And so the galaxy wrote them off. Empires took what was left. Mining guilds stripped the outer colonies of resources. Scavenger bands picked apart orbital husks for scrap. Even the council itself divided human border systems as unclaimed. The humans became a cautionary tale in academic circles, a moral fable in children's lessons. Ambition without restraint leads only to silence. But the silence was never total. Whispers spread, drifting in backwater stations and smugglers' dens. A salvage crew vanished after venturing too close to Titan. A raider flotilla entered the Perseus corridor and never returned. A lone merchant claimed he saw a vessel, black as void, slipping between stars with no signature, no beacon, no broadcast. When his logs were examined, they were scrambled beyond recovery, save for one line etched manually into his captain's journal, eyes in the dark, watching. The rumors were dismissed as space madness, as convenient excuses for poor crews meeting poor ends. Yet they spread. They always spread. And in the quiet halls of the Zyre Senate, a nervous ambassador muttered what others had begun to fear. What if humanity did not perish? What if they are only waiting? No one listened. Not yet. Because why should they? The galaxy had long moved on. With humanity gone, borders stabilized. Trade resumed. Piracy dwindled. For the first time in centuries, the great powers had a common absence to bind them. The void left by humans was comforting, predictable, until the disappearances began. It started with the Korvac, their 5th expansionary fleet, 40 warships strong, crossed the old human frontier. It was supposed to be a simple sweep, clear out derelicts, establish supply posts, pave the way for colonization. They sent regular reports for 3 days. On the 4th, silence. On the 5th, a fragmentary transmission. Screaming, metal tearing, then nothing. Search vessels combed the sector. They found no wreckage, no escape pods, not even radiation traces of battle. 40 ships had simply vanished. The Korvac blamed rival empires. The council scolded them for warmongering. But in the dark, in their private thoughts, even the most skeptical leaders felt the first pinprick of unease. Ships do not simply vanish. And humanity, though silent, had always been very good at making things vanish. On the fringes of known space, a scavenger named Orlith found something drifting, a lifeboat, cracked and pitted, its beacon weak. Inside lay a single alien officer of the Korvac fleet, delirious and frostbitten, repeating the same words in broken galactic standard. They're awake, the Dark Ones are awake. The council dismissed the testimony as madness. But the rumor spread faster than light. The galaxy had grown accustomed to humanity's absence. Now it was forced to consider something far worse. What if the silence had never meant death? What if it had meant preparation? The disappearance of the Korvac Fifth Fleet should have been a warning. Instead, it became a political weapon. The Zereth accused the Korvac of staging their own losses to justify expansion. The Sigrians insisted it was a council cover-up. Merchant guilds whispered of piracy, while priests of Vale claimed it was divine judgment for trespassing in the grave of humankind. But no one could explain the silence. In the weeks that followed, more fleets vanished. A Dravani patrol of 12 corvettes. A smuggler convoy carrying weapons to the Outer Rim. Even a Zyri survey ship, crewed by scholars with no weapons at all. All gone, erased from the star maps. It was not war. War left scars, wreckage, radiation burns, the pitted skeletons of starships. This left nothing but silence. The council grew restless. In its chamber of stone and glass, voices rose. The humans are extinct, the Sigrian chancellor snapped. We all saw their ruin. Then who? Hissed the Zyri envoy. Hunts in their empty space. Who consumes fleets without trace? Debates turned into shouting. Theories clashed like blades. Some demanded an expeditionary armada to sweep Sol clean once and for all. Others feared such a mission would simply feed more ships into the void. The council fractured, suspicion burning in every glance. Meanwhile, out beyond the borders, whispers grew into stories. A freighter limped into the trade hub of air, its crew pale and trembling. They claimed they had been stalked for 3 days by ships that registered no energy signature, no transponder, no beacon. Shadows in the dark, the captain said, voice shaking. They move with us, around us. We fired blind into the void, and then they were gone. The captain's logs were corrupted, wiped clean. Only a fragment remained, scrawled by hand on an old datasheet. We are watched. Merchants began refusing contracts near human space. Insurers raised premiums until shipping lanes collapsed. The once profitable routes that threaded through Terran corridors became haunted paths, navigated only by the desperate. And then came the lifeboat. It was found drifting near the Caldra's border, its hull scorched, its systems dead. Inside lay a single survivor, an officer of the Dravani patrol that had vanished weeks earlier. His body was half frozen, his breath shallow, his mind fractured. When revived, he spoke only once before dying. In broken galactic standard, he whispered, "They're awake." The word spread like fire. The galaxy, once so sure of humanity's death, now reeled under the possibility of their return. Some scoffed, some trembled, some began to prepare. Among the first to act was the Zereth Dominion. Convinced the disappearances were human vengeance, they dispatched a fleet of 60 warships into Sol itself. The council protested, but the Zereth ignored them. They would prove, once and for all, that humanity was dust. Their fleet never came back. What did return was a signal, not a broadcast, not a transmission, but a fragment of an old Terran frequency. It was intercepted by 6 listening posts, scattered across the galaxy. Cracked with static, its words were chillingly clear. We are not gone. We are ready. The council erupted in panic. Old enemies turned suspicious allies, banding together under the weight of fear. Emergency pacts were signed. Armies were mobilized. Whole sectors bristled with weapons. The galaxy had prepared itself for many threats. Rogue AIs, star plagues, incursions from beyond the rim. But none had ever prepared for the return of humanity, because humanity had not returned as they once were. The reports that trickled in described ships unlike any the galaxy had cataloged. Vessels black as void, moving without drive signatures, slipping through detection nets as though they weren't there at all. Entire moons found hollowed out overnight, their resources gone. Pirate strongholds annihilated with surgical strikes. Outposts gutted, their defenders slaughtered by unseen assailants. The galaxy began to name them, though no name was ever spoken by the humans themselves. Some called them specters, others voidborn. But one name rose above all others, carried by fearful whispers and trembling lips. The Black Armada. Not fleets, Not colonies, not ambassadors. Only shadows and warships, silent and unyielding. For centuries, the galaxy had mocked humanity's chaos, their wars, their noise. Now that silence had become the most terrifying sound of all, and as the stars flickered with the growing storm, every civilization in the Council began to realize the truth. The humans had not vanished. They had gone dark. They had gone quiet. They had gone prepare. The galaxy had grown used to silence. It was a silence of unanswered questions, the silence of vanishing fleets, the silence of dread whispered in docking bays and council halls. But silence was not the end. It was a prelude. The storm-broken soul. The Zereth Dominion's incursion fleet, 3 full battle groups, 60 warships in total, entered the system in perfect formation. Their orders were simple. Probe, confirm, annihilate. To the galaxy, they were the hammer that would smash the last myths of humanity. To themselves, they were executioners. They did not find a grave. The first sign was the light, not from weapons fire, but from soul itself. The star pulsed, an engineered flare of focused energy that blinded sensors and shredded comms. When the Zereth ships recovered, they found the battlefield had already changed. Black shapes surrounded them. They weren't like any warships in the archives. No gleaming hulls, no banners, no radiant drives. These vessels were jagged, angular, their surfaces drinking in the light. They emitted no signals, no chatter, no signatures, only silence. And then they moved. The Black Armada struck, not like an opposing fleet, but like a predator dismantling prey. Zereth destroyers were gutted by invisible beams that sliced through shields as though they weren't there. Cruisers were torn apart by swarms of micromissiles that tracked them with uncanny precision, detonating inside their armor rather than against it. A battleship, proud and defiant, opened fire with all guns, only to crumple under the sudden collapse of its artificial gravity, its crew crushed in an instant. The battle was not a contest. It was a slaughter. In less than an hour, 60 Zereth warships were reduced to debris fields drifting through soul silence. The few escape pods that fled were intercepted, disabled, and brought into the black holes. None returned. Across the galaxy, listening posts strained to capture fragments of the engagement. They recorded static, shrieks of overloading comms, desperate cries cut off mid-sentence. And then through the noise came a transmission, calm, deliberate, undeniable. It was in Terran standard. You thought us gone. You thought silence meant defeat. You were wrong. The words echoed across every major relay, broadcast in frequencies designed to bypass firewalls and override controls. Civilizations that had not heard human speech in centuries now listened in stunned silence. We do not kneel. We do not forget. We are the Black Armada. The declaration ended. The silence returned. And in that silence, the galaxy trembled. The council was thrown into chaos. Panic surged through its grand chamber, 100 voices shouting over one another. "This is war," cried the Dravani delegate. "They are monsters," shrieked the Zairi. "No," whispered the Cauldress representative, her scales quivering. "They are hunters." Armies were mobilized across a dozen empires. Entire fleets were recalled from borders and dispatched toward Terran space. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy stood united against a single threat. But the humans had not waited centuries in silence to fight fair. The counterattacks met only shadows. Every fleet that entered Terran space was erased. Every attempt to blockade the Soul Corridor collapsed in fire. Even fortified strongholds, orbital bastions built to withstand sieges, were dismantled by precise strikes, their defenses bypassed as if humanity had studied them for centuries. And they had. In the centuries of silence, humanity had not wasted time. They had retreated inward, consolidated, torn apart their old chaos, and reforged themselves in steel and darkness. They had studied every alien tactic, every weakness, every assumption. They had learned the galaxy's rules. And then they had built weapons to break them. The Black Armada was not simply a fleet. It was a doctrine. Silence as strategy. Surprise as law. Preparation as religion. Worlds fell not by bombardment, but by paralysis. Networks collapsed. Defenses shut down. In some cases, planetary governors awoke to find their fleets gone, their weapons dismantled, their people untouched, but their loyalties shifted, their governments rewritten in a single night. The humans did not conquer for territory. They conquered for dominance. Fear spread faster than fleets could fly. On backwater stations, alien children whispered stories of shadow ships with human skulls painted on their hulls. Merchant crews swore they saw human marines materialize inside their ships without warning, only to vanish again with a smile and a warning. We are watching. Some empires tried to sue for peace. Others begged for alliance. A few, proud and foolish, swore vengeance. They all received the same response. A signal, black screen, white letters, Terran Standard, Neo. The turning point came when the Erethan Hierophant, one of the most ancient powers in the Council, demanded humanity's submission on open channels. His broadcast was grandiose, steeped in arrogance. You were children who played with fire and burned your own world. Now you crawl from the ashes, lashing out in fear. Kneel before the Council or be eradicated. The galaxy waited for humanity's reply. It came not as words, but as action. The Hierophant's fleet, 200 ships, the pride of his empire, was stationed in the Erethan home system. They were the galaxy's most disciplined, most advanced armada outside the Council itself. They lasted 13 minutes. When the smoke cleared, the fleet was gone. The Hierophant's palace, once thought untouchable, was breached from orbit by precision strikes that left no civilian casualties but carved the Council's arrogance into dust. And then came the message. Across every channel, every world, every system. You ordered Earth to kneel. Instead, we sent the Black Armada. The galaxy had asked for submission. It had received retribution. And the storm had only just begun. The galaxy had always believed power lay in numbers, in empires measured by fleets and colonies, in treaties signed beneath banners of light. Humanity shattered that illusion. The Black Armada did not march as conquerors. They moved like shadows, dismantling one power after another with surgical precision. Entire fleets vanished without trace. Orbital yards, once teeming with shipwrights, became silent husks overnight. Supply chains withered, communication grids collapsed, defense networks went dark. No grand invasions, no occupations, just precise, ruthless strikes until worlds bent under fear alone. It was not war, it was domination, and it spread faster than any empire could resist. The Cauldress were the first to kneel. Once proud raiders who had mocked humanity's short-lived fire, they now begged for protectorate status. Their homeworld skies filled with black warships as their planetary shield failed without a single shot fired. The Black Armada had infiltrated its power core months before the confrontation even began. "We will serve," their speaker declared, voice trembling before the broadcast of a human admiral. The admiral's only reply, a single nod. Other species followed. One by one, empires bent their knees, not to enslavement, but to survival. To stand against humanity was to vanish. To stand with them was to live. But not all bowed willingly. The Dravani Confederacy, stubborn to the end, rallied 6 neighboring powers into a coalition fleet. Nearly 500 ships surged toward Sol, vowed to end humanity's terror once and for all. It was the greatest mobilization since the Council's founding. The Black Armada was waiting. The battle did not last an hour. Observers described a nightmare. Fleets torn apart by weapons that bent gravity itself. Ships cleaved into fragments by invisible lances. Command networks unraveled before orders could even be spoken. Entire wings surrendered mid-battle, their crews transmitting pleas for mercy into the void. The coalition shattered, its survivors fleeing in panic. Humanity did not pursue. They didn't need to. The lesson had been delivered. Resistance was suicide. Fear became the new currency of the galaxy. Markets crashed as trade routes closed. Entire species abandoned their colonies near Terran space. On frontier stations, stories spread of human operatives appearing out of thin air, dismantling defenses with a smile before leaving a single message behind. Your masters are watching. And yet, for all their ruthlessness, the humans did not massacre the weak. Civilian populations were untouched. Crops were left to grow. Industries were seized but not destroyed. It was as if the Black Armada wanted not ruin, but obedience. The final blow came in the council chamber itself. For centuries, the council had been the galaxy's stage of power. Marble pillars, silvered banners, 1,000 voices raised in debate. It was here that humanity had once been mocked as reckless children, warned that their wars would consume them. It was here they had been dismissed as extinct. Now the chamber fell silent as the doors opened. Humanity had arrived. They did not come with diplomats. They came with soldiers in armor black as void, their steps echoing on the polished floor. At their head walked an admiral, unmasked, unflinching, his eyes cold and steady. Behind him, a holographic projection bloomed. Earth, soul blazing at its center, surrounded by the emblem of the Black Armada. The delegates quivered. None spoke. The admiral's voice carried without amplification, deep and unyielding. You asked where we had gone. You whispered of our silence. You thought us dead. He paused, letting the words weigh heavy in the chamber. We were not gone. We were preparing. The silence was absolute. Even the air seemed to still. He continued, voice sharp as a blade. You ordered Earth to kneel. Instead, we built the Armada. You demanded submission. Instead, we forged domination. We do not kneel. Not to you. Not to anyone. The delegates, some trembling, some in tears, lowered their heads one by one. The galaxy's rulers, emperors, hierophants, chancellors, bowed. The chamber that once laughed at humanity now knelt to them. And so a new order was born. The Black Armada did not dissolve into occupation. Instead, they wove the galaxy into their shadow, a coalition protectorates, bound by fear and enforced by silence. Trade reopened under human oversight. Wars between aliens ceased, for no one dared draw the Armada's gaze. Humanity became not tyrants, but arbiters. Ruthless, yes. Unforgiving, always, but fair in their own cold way. To kneel to Earth was to survive. To resist was to vanish. Generations later, alien children would not be told tales of reckless humans who burned too fast. They would be told of the silence, the long silence when Earth vanished from the stars, and of the return when the Black Armada rose. In the end, humanity had not gone extinct. They had gone dark. They had gone silent. They had gone to prepare. And when they returned, the galaxy knelt,